You considering buying the new Diablo 4 expansion, but aren't sure if you want to pull the trigger? Let me give you my thoughts. You considering So I am a huge Diablo fan. I've been playing Diablo games as long as Diablo games have existed. But I do have some pretty interesting thoughts on Diablo 4 itself and this new expansion. So if you're coming to this video, I think you probably are in one of three categories. You've either played Diablo 4 before and maybe fell off of it and aren't sure if it's worth coming back for this expansion. You've played other Diablo games and you're wondering if, maybe the hype from the new Diablo 2 expansion brought you, maybe I should do the Diablo 4 expansion. And then the third category, you've played maybe other ARPGs like Last Epic or Path of Exile or something, and you're wondering if I should go to Diablo. So I'll try and couch my thoughts into people in those different categories. All right, so first let's talk through some of the pros of this new expansion. So you gain two classes. You get the Paladin and the Warlock. Technically, the Paladin was available in pre-order, blah, blah, blah. But you get two classes, new legendaries, new uniques. Uh, Anytime you add new stuff to a game, it's never a bad thing. So they also add a new zone, Scovos, which again, anytime you add anything new to a game is a good thing. But in Diablo 4, you generally don't spend a lot of time outside, except for maybe Helltide. So it's kind of like a small pro on that one. They retooled how skills work and skill point allocation. Honestly, kind of streamlined it. I think this is a win. The before you could kind of place sort of secondary skill points. You could do up to 3 in a lot of the secondary points, and it was a little bit overwhelming to do I do one here to get the thing or do I do all 3 into it. They streamlined it where basically almost all of your skill points go into your actual abilities, and then it's like 1 point in a sort of support role, and then maybe 1 point can change the way that that skill operates. So it's a little bit more streamlined. I think that's a win on that one. So I think one of the biggest wins for this expansion is this war plans idea. So most of the game is sort of these end game activities. Once you hit max level, you're doing Paragon levels, you're trying to get stronger. And war plans is a relatively simple change, but I think it's a win. It basically organizes the different end game activities that you're going to do. Rather than I'm going to spam a bunch of nightmare dungeons or whatever, you can do this war plan thing, which gives you like, all right, do one nightmare dungeon, do an undercity run, do a boss lair or something. It's a small change, but I think it's kind of a win because it focuses you and you can get like a little bit of extra gear out of there. As you do more of those activities, you get these like activity skill points or something, so you can slightly modify the activities that you're doing, where you can change how they operate, or maybe you get extra loot at the end or a chance for a treasure goblin to spawn or something like that. Overall, I think that one's a win. So a pretty small niche change. If you've played Diablo 4 before, you understand kind of how whispers work. They added little icons to the keys for like nightmare dungeons and undercity runs, because if you have like 30 nightmare dungeon keys, now you can know which ones also count as a whisper, so you can get some extra gear from there. Again, very small, but like an easy win that they took advantage of. And then lastly, they got rid of elixirs and herbs kind of altogether, which I think is a win. It's sort of a campaign that they've taken throughout Diablo 4. It first started where you had to collect different herbs from like all the different zones to make specific elixirs and incenses, and it was honestly kind of overwhelming. Then they got rid of that and made it sort of a generic herb. Now they've just got rid of it altogether, which I think is a win. They took some of that like experience gain that you could get and added that to talismans or charms, which is sort of whatever. But getting rid of that altogether, small, but it's a win. All right, so let's talk about some of the cons. So I listed like a lot of pros, but most of them were kind of minor changes. honestly, as somebody who's played Diablo 4 before, I noticed the changes, but if you're coming in new, you wouldn't really notice that they are changes. So some of the cons, they reintroduced sets, which had been missing from Diablo 4 for the entirety of the game being around. And I kind of get it. So they went hard on sets in Diablo 3. Like, they went hard. Like, every class had like 4 or 5 different sets and these 6-piece sets, and they were huge. And it basically defined your build. And so coming into Diablo 4, they were like, all right, we need to throttle that back because it was too much. But I'm surprised it's taken this long to get anything set related. But honestly, we still don't really have sets. They put it into this idea of talismans or charms, which is like its own sort of class of gear that exists on your character. So it doesn't really do what sets used to do, like Diablo 2 sets, where you'd have to weigh the pros and cons of replacing, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of gear to try and get the set bonuses. It's now just you have these other talisman things which can give you some set bonuses. Okay, great. I mean, I guess you could weigh either unique charms or set charms, but I don't think it's really that much of a change. All right, so the next con is kind of the big one in that there just isn't really a lot new in this expansion. I mean, I mentioned some quality of life things that are good for someone who's played Diablo 4. Yeah, they added some new classes. Yeah, they added a new zone. But honestly, for them to ask, $40 or whatever they're asking, it's not a lot new to the game. And so they added some new, like some new boss fights, some new boss interactions and stuff. Yes, you're going to fight Mephisto. He's like the main antagonist of this expansion. But not a huge change there. So they bring back a sort of recycled item from previous Diablo titles in the Herodric Cube, but it's honestly just kind of like another way of crafting stuff. So instead of adding those crafting things into the blacksmith or the occultist, it's this new sort of crafting system of the Herodric Cube, but it's just another crafting thing. Now, I'm not saying to bring back the Herodric Cube that was in Diablo 2. When they introduced that, that was a huge thing, completely changed the way the game played, was a huge win for the Diablo franchise and Diablo 2. And so don't just bring that back, but there's not a new, like, innovation with this Herodric Cube. It's got a little bit of feel of previous where you can kind of combine things. But like I said, it just kind of feels like another crafting thing. It almost kind of feels like when they reintroduced runes into Diablo 4. So rune words and runes in Diablo 2 were awesome. Everyone trying to get these runes to build the specific rune word and that kind of stuff. That was amazing for Diablo 2. You can't really bring that back in a Diablo 4 game like modern gaming because it probably wouldn't work. But when they reintroduce runes into Diablo 4, it's basically just like, oh, here are I can put 2 runes into a thing and sort of gain some extra ability every once in a while, some extra defensive or some extra movement, or I can cast an extra lightning bolt or something. The Herodric Cube coming back kind of feels like that, where they're recycling an old idea, but kind of worse. And then, of course, they add fishing. I don't know why. Fishing? Like, what are you going to do for fishing in this game? Why do I need fishing? I don't know. Every game seems to think that you need fishing in it. I'm talking to you, Crimson Desert. Why do you have fishing? Why does Diablo 4 have fishing? It's such a fast-paced game that why am I just going to stand there and fish? I could sell them for like 100 gold, but I could also sell this other item over here that sells for 13 million gold. So what's the point? I don't really see this as the type of game where you sit idly waiting for a group to form like World of Warcraft and okay, I'll do some fishing while I'm waiting for the raid to start. Diablo 4 isn't really that kind of game, so you've basically just added a mechanic that's existed in gaming for 15 or 20, 25 years that doesn't really add much to this game. So then I have some kind of maybe neither pro nor con or both pro and con, some kind of other things that have changed in the game but aren't really pro or con. So first is the campaign. The campaign is better than the first expansion, so better than Vessel of Hatred. But honestly, that's not really saying much. The campaign in the first expansion was atrocious. Uh, I played through it once, and that's enough for me. This campaign is better, but it's better than a poor campaign, so it's not really saying much. It's a short campaign. I think overall it took me less than 10 hours to get through the campaign, but I don't really know if that's good or bad. Do I want the campaign to be longer? I mean, this type of game is not like an Elden Ring or a Crimson Desert where I want to spend 100 hours doing the sort of main quest. The goal of this type of game is to get to the end game. So I probably want a campaign to be short, or maybe I just do it once. So that's where it's like, it's short, but maybe that's okay. I might kind of compare this to like Call of Duty's campaign. If you want to play the campaign, great. It's pretty short. You might get some storyline kind of stuff in there, or context or whatever. But the ultimate goal is to get to like multiplayer or Warzone or something. The ultimate goal of playing Diablo 4 is to get to the end game where you can do nightmare dungeons over and over, or the pit, or boss layers or something. So it's a little bit of both. And so then they introduced this idea of echoing hatred. It's just another sort of way in which you can just fight a bunch of enemies. But you go into this, you get a calling where you go into this zone and you fight increasingly stronger waves of monsters until you culminate. Either you beat them all, you get to the highest difficulty, or you die, or you get overwhelmed and you can't kill them fast enough or something, which is cool, but like that was one of the seasons of Diablo 3 where you had that idea and you could get tokens that could improve your gear, like the Cul de Sans to spare or something. So it's not a new idea. They're just bringing it back in Diablo 4. So, like, cool, but again, we've already seen that. All right, so here is why we came to the video. So, if you're in the category of you've played other Diablo games like Diablo 1, 2, and 3, and you haven't tried Diablo 4 and you're trying to figure out, all right, with this new expansion, is it worth it to jump in Diablo 4? It kind of depends. If you really liked Diablo 3, you're probably going to like Diablo 4. When I first started playing Diablo 4, I thought to myself, this is basically just Diablo 3 Part 2. A little bit upgraded graphics, slightly different character makeup and stuff. So this expansion adds some new sort of quality of life stuff. This is the best version of Diablo 4 that has existed. So if you're a Diablo 3 fan, you'll probably like where Diablo 4 is now. If you prefer Diablo 1 or Diablo 2, you're probably not going to like Diablo 4. It's probably not worth it to jump into Diablo 4 now. Diablo 4 doesn't really have a lot of story. If you're coming from Diablo 2 and you play through the story in normal, nightmare, hell, and like that's kind of how you feel, how you play the game, you're not going to get that from Diablo 4. Like I said, the campaign is like less than 10 hours. There's not a whole lot of story involved. The goal is just get to the end game and just kill a bunch of monsters. It's a lot faster, it's a lot sort of flashier, and a lot more skills and abilities going on. So if you prefer Diablo 1 or Diablo 2, you're probably not going to like Diablo 4. All right, so if you're in the category of you've played Diablo 4, maybe got bored of it or fell off of it, and you're wondering if you want to come back for the Lord of Hatred expansion, it kind of depends what your thoughts were previously. If you liked it but it got stale, it's probably good to come back. So like I said, some of those quality of life changes, they've added some new stuff, some new classes, new zone, some new end game activities, and sort of focused end game progression. So if you liked it before, I think you're going to like it with this new expansion. If you didn't like it, I don't think enough has changed with this new expansion to warrant you coming back. Like if you played maybe the original one or played the first expansion and you're like, this is just the same kind of boring stuff, spoiler alert, it's the same kind of boring stuff in this new expansion. You gain a couple of quality of life changes, but it's basically the same thing. All right, and if you're in that category of people where you've played other ARPGs and you're trying to figure out, should I jump into Diablo, or maybe where in the Diablo franchise should I jump in? I am biased. I am a Diablo fan, but I see Diablo as like the standard for these action RPGs or ARPGs, and it's the standard for a reason. It's a good game. And so if you look at like Path of Exile or Last Epic or something, they're innovating off of the standard, but the standard is there for a reason. So if somehow you've played these other games and you enjoy them, I think you would like Diablo 4, and this is probably a good time to jump into it. This is the best time that Diablo 4 has existed. All right, so what do you think? Do you think it's worth it to jump into the new expansion for Diablo 4?